Yo, what up? It's me, yo boy. Fuck this. Are you guys ready? We're on page like 300 and change. We're on section 3. So good for us. Good for us making it all the way to section 3. So we're on page. We're on section 3, chapter 10. Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. There we go. So we are on. Why is there 2 extra empty pages? Whatever. Section 3. This is technically chapter 10. This is page 314 in the PDF and 283 in the document. So, however you're counting or if you're following along, that is where we're at. The general welfare. So I can't wait to listen to rich, out of touch jackasses, megalomaniacs talk about fucking welfare. Hi, Puck. How you doing, buddy? You being cute? Refreshing a little bit of my tea, and we are ready to go. All right. Back to formatting problems. The PDF. So, boop. Alright, section 3. The general welfare. When our founding fathers wrote in the Constitution that the federal government would, quote, promote the general welfare, they could not have fathomed a massive bureaucracy that would someday spend $3 trillion in a single year, roughly the sum combined spent by the departments covered in this section in 2022. Approximately half of that colossal sum was spent by the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, alone, the belly of a massive behemoth that is the modern administrative state. HHS is home to Medicare and Medicaid, the principal drivers of our $31 trillion national debt. When Congress passed the President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law these programs, they were set on autopilot with no plan for how to pay for them. The first year that Medicare's spending was visible on the books was 1967. From that point on through 2020, according to American Main Street Initiative's analysis. Oh, is this a real data as opposed to the weakest of data? Where are you getting your fucking data from? So I guess we'll find out. No, we won't. We will never know. Oh, I forgot my Tim Pool hat. Hold on. I forgot my hat. Hold on. Stop everything. Okay, there we go. There you go. Alright, we're good. Everything's okay. Nobody panic. It's fine. Alright. Where was I? America's Main Street Initiative analysis of official federal tallies. Medicare and Medicaid combined cost $17.8 trillion, while our combined federal deficit over the same span were $17.9 trillion. In essence, our deficit problem is a Medicare and Medicaid problem. Huh? What? What? The data genie? Oh my god. Okay. No, that's not how this works. You can't just say all of the government spending is all like overdrawn because of one program. That is actually insane. It's the cumulative amount. That's not how debt works. That's also not how the federal government budget works. Like, the budget has to be approved. Oh, God. In essence, our deficit problem is a Medicare and Medicaid problem. Yeah, okay. HHS is also home to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and the National Institute of Health, NIH. The duo most responsible, along with President Joe Biden, for the irrational, destructive, un-American mask and vaccine mandates that were imposed upon ostensibly free people during the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump was in office during that time. What do you mean? What in the fuck? My brother in Christ, no. All along it was clear from randomized controlled trials, the gold standard of medical research. That's also not true. You can't have randomized controlled trials for everything in medical care, especially in medical care, because it's unethical. You can't do that. You can't tell people you're giving them life-saving medicine and not give it to them. You also can't give people things like hormones and expect them to not notice. Is that how that works? Is that how that works at all? Good lord. Oh, God. Military is absolutely necessary when Biden left billions of dollars of working equipment. Where? Where did Biden leave anything? Are you talking about, like, Trump pulling out of Afghanistan? That wasn't Biden. Anyway, working equipment is pretty, vague. It's a pretty open-ended thing. But whatever. That masks provide little to no benefit to prevent the spread of viruses and might even be counterproductive. Oh, okay. So I want to remind everybody at the beginning of this document, this is how they were talking about COVID-19 and how it was like bullshit and stuff. And then in the last chapter that we read yesterday, they were praising Trump handling COVID and how important that was. And then in this one, they're disparaging it again. So pick a lane, I guess. Yet the CDC ignored these high-quality RCTs, cherry-picked from politically malleable observational studies. What? Observational study? Okay, what study did you use to find out if the masks worked or not? You can't do a randomized trial of some people wearing masks and some people not wearing masks. They're gonna know if they're wearing masks, so you don't have, like, a test group. Like, it doesn't work. None of this makes any sense. And how are you going to find out if the mask works or not without doing observational studies? You have to observe. That makes no sense. Oh, this document. Oh my god. Okay, listen, whatever you believe about COVID or whatever you think about whatever administration, I don't care. This document is insane. This document is on crack. This doesn't make any sense. Under COVID, as former director of HHS's Office of Civil Rights, Roger Severnio writes in Chapter 14, the CDC exposed itself as, quote, perhaps the most incompetent and arrogant agency in the federal government. Really? Did it? Oh, goddamn, we gotta get rid of them experts again, I guess. I don't know. Is it Biden that pulled out of Afghanistan? That doesn't sound right to me. Was it not Trump that was doing the pullout and it was like haphazard and completely fucked up? Or was that Iraq? Am I getting my Afghanistan and Iraq? Biden followed Trump's plan to leave Afghanistan that was set up long before he became president. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Okay. Clarification. Thank you. I appreciate the care. That's what I thought. All right. Anyway. Nor is the CDC the only villain in this play. Villain? You don't... What? The language. Severino writes of the National Institute of Health, despite its popular image of a benign science agency, NIH was responsible for paying for research in aborted baby body parts. Human-animal chimera experiments. Brother Edward. NIH was responsible for paying for research in aborted baby body parts, human-animal chimera experiments. Why is there a comma here? This is like an incomplete... Is that supposed to be the end of a list? In which the genes of humans and animals are mixed, quote, and gain of function viral research that may have been responsible for COVID-19. Oh, so now it wasn't like something that got out from China as like a bioweapon, which is what they were saying earlier in this. Now it was the National Institute of Health in America that let COVID-19 go in its own country for chimera experiments. That's so funny. I'm dead. Come on. Again, I don't really care what your personal politics are, whatever your ideas are about who's running the government or whatever the fuck. This document's on crack. Like, no reasonable person can read this document and say, yeah, that makes sense. Because this document contradicts itself too often. Servino writes that, quote, Anthony Fauci's division of the NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, owns half the patent for the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine, end quote, and, quote, several NIH employees, end quote, receive, quote, up to $150,000 annually from Moderna vaccine sales, end quote. Well, that sounds like a problem with capitalism. See you later. That sounds like a problem with capitalism, then. You don't want money in science? Scientists shouldn't make money? $150,000 a year is not very much money. That would be the same experimental mRNA vaccine that the CDC now wants to force on children who are at little to no risk from COVID-19, but at great risk from public health officials. What? Okay. God, fucking Christ. Experimental mRNA vaccine. Yeah, okay. Sure. Sure. The incestuous relationship between the NIH, the CDC, and vaccine makers. What do you mean the incestuous relate? They had to buy it. Like, that was a whole thing that, like, that countries were bidding on like dosages and amounts of the vaccines that were developed. Like, that was a whole thing that was talked about. Did we just forget about that, I guess? All right. Holy shit. With all the conflict of interest it entails. What conflict of interest? Cannot be allowed to continue, and the revolving door between them must be locked. As Servino writes, quote, funding for scientific research should not be controlled by a small group of highly paid, unaccountable insiders at the NIH. But it's not. Many of whom stay in power for decades. The NIH monopoly on directing research should be what? They have a monopoly? I think a Flurf wrote this. Yeah, this is... The next HHS secretary should immediately put an end to the department's foray into woke transgender activism. Oh, we're just gonna, like, fucking hit the brakes on COVID and then just be like, quick! We need a hard left turn into the non sequitur to fucking trans people. Oh, my God. I'm sorry, what? What do they think activism is? Because activism just seems to be this catch-all term for, like, I don't know, doing science? They have Monopoly. I prefer Catan. Catan is way better. Monopoly is terrible. I don't know why we run our society on Monopoly when everybody hates Monopoly and nobody wants to play Monopoly because Monopoly sucks. Why are we choosing to live Monopoly? Oh, God. Oh, dear Lord. HHS also pushes abortion as a form of health care, skirting and sometimes blatantly defying the Hyde Amendment in the process. Servino writes that the, quote, FDA should, ellipses, reverse its approval of chemical abortion drugs because the politicized approval process was illegal from the start. Huh? How long before they try to get rid of condoms? In addition, HHS programs often violate the spirit, whatever the fuck that means, and sometimes the letter of conscience protection laws. Conscientious protection laws. Servino writes that the HHS, quote, secretary should pursue a robust agenda to protect the fundamental right to life, protect conscientious rights, and uphold bodily integrity rooted in biological realities, not ideology. That's you! That's you're the one with the ideology here. That defies science and defies reason. And defies just being conscientious of other people. The next secretary should also reverse the Biden administration's focus on, quote, LGBTQ plus equity, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, and penalizing marriage. Replacing such policies with those encouraging marriage, work, motherhood, fatherhood, and nuclear families. That's an agenda. That is a political agenda about the way you believe people should live. This is the opposite. This is the opposite of a small government. This is the opposite of government getting out of your life. This is wanting the government to dictate to who's allowed to be in your family. Like, this is massive overreach, in my opinion. If there is another department that has gone off the rails like the HHS during the Obama and Biden administration, it is the once proud Department of Justice. Or are we just forgetting that Trump was in between those two? And he did nothing? They aren't allowed to care about bodily autonomy, right? If there's another department that blah blah blah, DOJ. As former counselor to the Attorney General, Gene Hamilton writes in Chapter 17, the department, quote, has a long and noble history, end quote. Edmund Randolph, the first Attorney General, took office the same year as President Washington, yet its long-standing reputation has been marred by the Biden's administration abuse of the department's power for its own ends. Who was chanting lock her up again during his first campaign and his second campaign now? The third campaign, technically, I guess, because he ran against Biden. Third attempt. Hamilton writes that the department's, quote, unprecedented politicization and weaponization under Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland, resulting in, quote, politically motivated and viewpoint-based prosecutions of political enemies and indifference to crimes of political allies has made the department, quote, a threat to the republic. The fact that Trump is not currently in jail does tell me that there is a problem inside of, the American justice system, because with the amount that man just walked all over the court in its system and believes that he is above the rule of law, tells me that they're giving way too much leniency to Trump for I don't know what reason. Because they don't want to put a former president in jail? I don't know. Trump actually wants to lock up anybody who disagrees with him. And nobody went after Trump until he broke laws. Yeah, exactly. He's actively saying he's going to throw people in jail that don't agree with him. This is especially true of the... Oh, sorry, I just skipped something. The most important... quote, the most important... No, end quote, sorry. The most important thing for the next Attorney General to do is to refocus the department on its core functions of, quote, protecting public safety and defending the rule of law, end quote, while restoring its, quote, values of independence, impartiality, honesty, integrity, respect, and excellence, end quote. This is especially true of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, a bloated, arrogant, increasingly lawless organization, especially at the top. Quote, the FBI views itself as an independent agency, end quote, that is, quote, on par with the Attorney General, end quote, rather than as an agency that is under the Attorney General and fully AG and fully accountable to him or her. Keep your gender ideology pronouns out of my very Republican document. Thank you very much. To rein in this, quote, completely out of control, end quote, bureau, and remind it of its place within rather than at the top of the DOJ hierarchy. Hamilton writes that the FBI's separate office of attorney counsel with, quote, approximately 300 attorneys, end quote, separate office of legislative affairs and separate office of public affairs should all be abolished. Requiring this doesn't sound like extremist language, right? This doesn't sound like extremist language. We just want to abolish the thing that held us accountable for when we broke the law, right? Because no you. Oh my god. Unquote. I like unquote. Unquote quay. Requiring the FBI to get its legal advice from the wider department, quote, would serve as a crucial check on an agency that has recently pushed past legal boundaries after legal boundary, end quote. Indeed, Hamilton writes, quote, the next conservative administration should eliminate the office within the FBI that it has the power to eliminate without any action from Congress, end quote. And so they want to cripple the FBI so they can break it into pieces and abolish it. Elsewhere, DOJ should target violent and career criminals like Trump, who's a career criminal and is violent. No, not like Trump. Not parents. Parents? I'm sorry, where is the DOJ targeting parents? What the fuck? Work to dismantle criminal organizations, like Trump, partly by rigorously prosecuting interstate drug activity, and restart the Trump administration's China initiative to address Chinese espionage and theft of trade secrets. All of this is so repetitive. Like, what does this have to do with the general welfare? Why are we talking about the... which the Biden administration, quote, terminated, ellipses, largely out of concern for poor optics, end quote. Sure. I doubt that. It should also enforce existing federal law that prohibits mailing abortifacients? What is that? What is that? I don't know what that is. What's an abortifacient? Mailing abortifacients. Abortifacients. What is this? An abortifacient, that which will cause a miscarriage, is a substance that induces abortion. Okay. Abortifacient is any drug or chemical preparation that induces abortion. Okay. Thank you. Whew. It should also enforce existing federal law that prohibits mailing abortifacients rather than harassing pro-life demonstrators. What do you mean? Pro-life demonstrators are notoriously terrorists and harass people outside of places like Planned Parenthood. And when I say terrorists, I mean they were literally bombing Planned Parenthoods. What the fuck are you talking about? The law means nothing to these people. The safety of others means nothing to these people. They don't fucking care. Respect the constitutional guarantee of the freedom of speech rather than trying to police speech on the internet. And enforce federal immigration laws rather than pretend there is no border. What? What in the fuck? In contrast, the DOJ's long history of the Department of Education, the Department, or ED, discussed by Lindsey Burke in Chapter 11, is a creation of the Jimmy Carter administration. The department is a convenient one-stop shop for the woke education cartel. The what? I'm sorry. Some of these things I feel like need to be like paintings. Like, what? Can you please give me a visual representation of what is the woke education cartel? Guys, I snuck in this book. It's about evolution. Oh, look, this one. It's got pictures of your reproductive organs in it. This is unbelievable. How old are you? 2? What are you 10? What are you 13? Get out of here. Who did this? This is insane. This is insanity. It's devolving. As the COVID era showed, is not particularly concerned with children's education. Okay. Schools should be responsive to parents rather than to leftist advocates intent on indoctrination. And the more the federal government is involved in education, the less responsive to parents the public schools will be. Oh my god, you know how throughout this I've been saying, like, hey, listen, if you want more science or you want better scientists from America existing, then you need to spend more in your education. Now they're like, oh, we don't want experts in education, we just want parents who definitely know things. Okay. Yeah, go ask a random parent on the street to see if they can teach their kids quadratic equations. Surely it will go well. Ugh. This department is an example of federal intrusion into traditionally state and local realm. Oh, you mean like telling me who my family members are allowed to be? Like, I have to have a nuclear family or else? That kind of stuff? Leftist education. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck leftist education is. For the sake of American children, Congress should shutter it and return control of education to the states. So yes, they want no equality or equity to education across the country, and they want it to be this state by state. So the education you get in Florida is going to be different than the education you get in California, and the education you get in California is going to be different than the education you get in New York, and the education that you get in New York is going to be, like, there's already redlining district issues, let alone making that, like, this is just going to exacerbate those issues. Short of this, the Secretary of Education should insist that the department serve parents and American ideals, not advocates whose message is that children can choose their own sex. That America is systematically racist, that math itself is racist, and that Martin Luther King Jr.'s ideal of a colorblind society should be rejected in favor of reinstating a color-conscious society. Oh, we gotta love misrepresenting fucking Martin Luther King Jr. You can't have it without one of those. The next head of this department will have a lot to do, hopefully culminating in the department's closure. April called it. And a salutary restoration of educational control to states, localities, and parents. Yeah, parents shouldn't be in charge. Sorry, no offense. Parents don't know what they're doing when it comes to education. Parents barely know what they're doing when it comes to parenting. You have to talk about in generalities across the country. I'm sure there are some parents that would be good teachers, and there are some parents that are great parents, but you have to consider that you can't operate on that ideal, especially since we're not doing anything and are saying that we shouldn't in fact do anything to make these parents better at their jobs, right? Like, these parents are parents that are in an economic struggle that are working 40 plus hours a week. Both parents, they don't have time to be that invested in their fucking children's education, and even if they want to, they have to be invested in their own education because you have to educate yourself. So you're asking these parents to do more than what you're enabling them to do. Hello. The next Secretary of Energy will similarly have much work to do. Under the next president, the Department of Energy should end the Biden administration's unprovoked war on fossil fuels. Ugh. Restore America's energy independence. You know how you get energy independence? Taking oil from other countries is not independence, guys. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Oppose eyesore windmills built at taxpayer expense and respect the rights of Americans to buy and drive cars of their own choosing rather than trying to force them into electric vehicles and eventually out of the driver's seat altogether in favor of self-driving robots. Yeah, fuck you, Elon. What is going on? Hello. This part of this. This is the most insane this has gotten so far. What the fuck? As former commissioner of the federal, all of those are incredibly different things. Eyesore windmills. How old are you? This sounds like it was written by somebody like, I can hear the windmill. It's giving me brain cancer. You're going to school / classes right now to switch careers. Parenting, teaching, housekeeping, working are at least 2.5 jobs too much for one person. Yeah, no, absolutely. If you want people to do these things, you need to enable them to do so. This isn't enabling anybody. This is disabling everyone. As former commissioner of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, Bernard L. McNamee says in Chapter 12, quote, a conservative president must be committed to unleashing all of America's energy resources and making the energy economy serve the American people, not special interests. In Chapter 10, Darren Basks writes that the Biden administration's Department of Agriculture claims to be, quote, transforming the food system as we know it, end quote. But the government, quote, does not need to transform the food system, end quote. Instead, quote, it should respect Americans, farmers, truckers, end quote, and families. God, the quotations are so bad. In Chapter 13, former Chief of Staff at Environmental Protection Agency Mandy Guerra writes that the EPA's, quote, current activities and staffing levels far exceed its congressional mandates and purpose, end quote, whereas, quote, initial success, end quote, in its, quote, infancy, end quote, in the 1970s was a product of, quote, clear mandates as streamlined structure and recognition of the state's prominent role, end quote, have since become a, quote, coercive, end quote, agency full of embedded activists. Its, quote, structure and mission should be greatly circumscribed, end quote. If you thought that made any sense with those kinds of quotations, you're wrong. Objectively wrong. We should have dapper drinking rules for this document. We do have, like, the citation needed. We have period, but take a drink. If they mention Reagan, take a drink. If anybody tells me that I'm gonna like a policy from Reagan, I'm gonna laugh at you. No offense, but no. Reagan's a nightmare creature. You would have a hard time finding something that Reagan's done that I would agree with. Former Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Benjamin S. Carson, writes in Chapter 15 that HUD is beset with, quote, mission creep, end quote, and regularly crosses the line into exercising quasi-legislative powers. In the next administration, it should refocus on its core duties and keep, quote, non-citizens, ellipses, from living in federally assisted housing, end quote, provide enhanced, quote, oversight of foreign ownership of U.S. real estate, end quote, and, quote, reinvigorate paths to upward economic mobility, end quote, and economic, quote, self-sufficiency, end quote. You cannot do quotes like this. It's insanity. That means nothing. Whoever wrote this made me lose faith in humanity. Yeah, I know, right? Like, they want anybody, like, anybody who's a non-citizen, which is any immigrant including immigrants who are here on visas or any immigrants that is being brought into the country for, like, you know, doing science like they want or an expert in something, to just not have any assistance and sleep in their street, I guess. Take a drink for every time they say something stupid. No, they just waterfall the whole thing. No, this whole thing is stupid. Yeah, they actually said, quote, farmers, truckers, end quote, and family. Yes, this is insane. No rational person writes like this. This is not, nobody who knows how to write a document or read a document on, like, oh, God, I want to die. In Chapter 18, former Acting Assistant Secretary of Policy at the Department of Labor, Jonathan Berry, writes that the department and related agencies should pursue pro-family, pro-worker policies to help, quote, restore the family-supporting job as a centerpiece of the American economy, end quote, in lieu of the current administration's, quote, left-wing social engineering agenda, end quote, dash, quote, the most assertive, end quote, in history, dash, which empowers race, gender, and climate change activists at the expense of American workers. In Chapter 19, the Department of Transportation, or DOT, former DOT Deputy Assistant Director for Research and Technology, Diana Furchtgott-Roth, writes, quote, in pursuit of an anti-fossil fuel climate change agenda never approved by Congress, the Biden administration has raised fuel economy requirements to levels that cannot realistically be met, end quote, by most gas-powered cars, thereby reducing America's freedom while increasing costs. I'm just imagining, like, these people and what they would have reacted like when everybody's like, we need to stop using aerosol cans because it's punching a hole in the ozone layer. Reagan did the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which granted amnesty to basically every immigrant in the U.S. at the time. It was a fast track to citizenship for most of them. Other than that, Reagan sucked balls. Good job, Reagan. You did a thing. And then just completely boned everything else. Good shit. Lastly, former acting chief of staff of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Brooks D. Tucker, echoing concerns expressed in other chapters, writes in Chapter 20 that the, quote, that Veteran Affairs VA must be, quote, accountable to the needs and problems of veterans, not subservient to the parochial preference of the bureaucracy, end quote. Yay! Chapter 10, Department of Agriculture. God, we made it to page 321. American farmers efficiently and safely produce food that meets needs of individuals around the globe. Period. Because, take a drink, of the innovation and resilience of the nation's farmers, American agriculture is a model for the world. If farmers are allowed to operate without unnecessary government intervention, American agriculture will continue to flourish, producing plentiful, safe, nutritious, and affordable food. Okay, I just want to point out real quick, one of the major things that farmers face is monopoly corporations overpricing for, like, seed and chicken feed and stuff like that, because the regulations are so bad and the government should be stepping in. But, you know, whatever. Why would we listen to what farmers actually have to say about it? The U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, can and should play a limited role, with much of its focus on removing governmental barriers that hinder food production or otherwise undermine efforts to meet consumer demands. The USDA should recognize what should be self-evident. Agriculture production should first and foremost be focused on efficiently producing safe food. This chapter, yeah, but it has to be sustainable. If it's not sustainable, then it's irrelevant, because you're just going to burn everything out. Like, farming, you have to farm in cycles. You can't just farm the land completely all the time. You have to let it recover. The same thing applies to, like, animal safety and animal control and like treating your like the animals that you're raising with care and respect. Like, because you need something sustainable. It's like the same thing with like trees and like clear cutting for cows. Like you just eat less meat, guys. It's not that hard. You don't have to have meat every day. You don't have to have meat for every meal. America is insane. The American diet is makes no sense. It's absurd. Yeah, crop rotation, exactly. Like what? This chapter provides important background on the USDA and identifies many of the USDA's specific issues that will be faced by an incoming administration. It provides specific recommendations for the next administration about how to address these issues and lays out conservative vision for what the USDA should look like in the future. None of these people know anything about farming. Mission statement. The current mission statement, as stated by the Biden administration, highlights the broad scope of the USDA. Quote, to serve all Americans by providing effective, innovative, science-based public policy leadership in agriculture, food and nutrition, and natural resources, protection and management, rural development, and related issues with a commitment to delivering equitable and climate-smart opportunities that inspire and help America thrive. The first part of the mission statement regarding the issue covered is not new to the Biden administration. It reflects an overly broad nature of the USDA's work. However, the language bringing in equity and climate change is new to the Biden administration and part of the USDA's express effort to transform agriculture production. The USDA's new vision statement illuminates the focus of this effort. Quote, an equitable and climate smart food and agricultural economy that protects and improves the health, nutrition, and quality of life of Americans, yields healthy land, forest, and clean water, helps rural Americans thrive, and feed the world. This effort is one of a federal central plan to put climate change and environmental issues ahead of most important requirements of agriculture to efficiently No, it doesn't. It doesn't do that. It makes it sustainable so that way you can keep providing that. People are insane. Issue ahead of the most important requirement of agriculture to efficiently produce safe food. The USDA would apparently use its power to change the very nature of the food and agriculture economy into one that is, quote, equitable and climate smart. How are you going to produce food when you have everlasting droughts because you fucked the climate up? Like, the weather, whether you like it or not, and the climate is incredibly important to whether or not you're going to yield good crops. And the fact that these people don't know that tells me they should not be in charge of anything related to agriculture. Holy shit. This is like impressively stupid. This is like a new level of impressively stupid. As an initial matter, the USDA should not try to control and shape the economy, but should instead remove obstacles that hinder food production. Furthermore, it should not place ancillary issues such as environmental issues ahead of agriculture production itself. You can't have agriculture without environment. This is ridiculous. This is insanity. A proper mission statement. Even before the Biden administration's radical effort to reshape the USDA's work, the USDA's mission was and is too broad, including serving as a major welfare agency through implementation of programs such as food stamps. This far-reaching mission is not the fault of the USDA, but of Congress, which has given the department its extensive power. Congress must limit the USDA's role. A proper mission would clarify that the department's primary focus is on agriculture and that the USDA serves all Americans. The USDA's client is the American people in general, not a subset of interests such as farmers, meat packers, environmental groups, etc. Who do you think the American people are? Within this agricultural focus, the USDA should develop and disseminate information and research the historical role of the USDA, identify and address concrete threats to public health. Oh, you mean like climate change? And clean water? And food stamps? and safety arising directly from food and agriculture, remove unjustified foreign trade barriers blocking market access for American agricultural goods, and generally remove government barriers that undermine access to safe and affordable food across the food supply chain. Core principles. Why can't we just take more advantage of poor working conditions in other countries for cheap labor? Core principles should be included within any mission statement, including in recognition that farmers and the food system in general should be free from unnecessary government intervention. Further, there should be clear statements about the and I should be clear to keep the fucking government from overreaching and unnecessarily intervening in my fucking uterus. Fuck off. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You're micromanaging and trying to control literally everything. Fuck off. About the importance of sound science to inform the USDA's work and respect for personal freedom. The only people who get personal freedom are the people we decide get personal freedom if they operate under our very specific rules, which is not personal freedom at all. And individual dietary choices, private property rights, and the rule of law. Take these factors into account below as a model of the USDA's mission statement. To develop and disseminate agricultural information and research, identify, address concrete public health and safety threats directly connected to food and agriculture, and remove both unjustified foreign trade barriers for U.S. goods and domestic government barriers that undermine access to safe and affordable. This is just a copy-paste. You just copy-pasted what you said. Okay. Your freedom is conditional. Right? Your freedom is conditional and you can rent it. Oh, like how Trump broke Conventone? Yeah. American freedom. I'm telling you, everything about American freedom in America is a lie. All of it. Everything is a lie. It's been a lie the whole time. And it's up to the American people now to take the opportunities that they have now to try and actually push towards and making those freedoms actually real. To actually make the American dream a real dream as opposed to just a fantasy. Overview. In 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed into law the legislation that created the USDA. The department had a very narrow mission focused on dissemination of information connected to agriculture and, quote, to produce... By the way, all of this stuff would still involve climate change things. But whatever. The department had very narrow mission focused on dissemination of information connected to agriculture and, quote, to procure, propagate, and distribute among the people new valuable seeds and plants, end quote. During the last 160 years, the scope of the USDA work has expanded well beyond that narrow mission and well beyond agriculture itself. In addition to being a distributor of farm subsidies, the USDA runs the food stamp program and other food-related welfare programs and covers issues including conservation, biofuels, forestry, and rural programs. Based on the USDA's fiscal year, FY, we're back to this, 2023 budget summary outlays are estimated between $261 billion and $221 billion for mandatory programs and $39 billion for discretionary programs. These outlays are broken down. That's less money than Trump, than what's his face? Whatever, never mind. I lost my train of thought. These outlays are broken down as follows. Nutrition assistance, 70%. Farm conservation and commodity programs, 14%. Quote, all other, end quote, which include rural development, research, food safety, marketing, and regulatory and departmental management, 11%. Forestry, 5%. The USDA has provided a summary of its size, explaining, quote, today USDA is comprised of 29 agencies organized under 8 mission areas and 16 staff offices with nearly 100,000 employees serving the American people at more than 6,000 locations across the country and abroad. Major priority issues and specific recommendations. For an incoming administration, there are a number of issues that should be addressed at the USDA. This chapter identifies and discusses many of those important issues. The initial issues discussed should be a priority issue in the next administration. Defend American agriculture. It is deeply unfortunate that the first issue identified must be a willingness of the incoming administration to defend American agriculture, but this is precisely what the top priority for that administration should be. As previously discussed, the Biden administration is seeking to use the federal government to transform the American food system. The USDA website explains, quote, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, alongside Biden-Harris administration leadership and people of this great country, has embarked on another historic journey, transforming the food system as we know it, from farm to fork at every stage along with the supply chain, end quote. The federal government does not need to transform the food system or develop a national plan to intervene across the supply chain. Why not? Like, what do you mean? Like, your population is growing, technology is advancing, the government intervening to enable farmers and enable people to maintain their jobs and create and distribute food in a timely manner, even if the supply chain gets interrupted, is a good thing. Instead, it should respect American farmers, truckers, and everyone who makes the food supply chain so resilient and successful. One of the important lessons learned during the COVID-19 pandemic was how critical it is to remove barriers to the food supply chain, not increase them. Nothing in that thing said anything about increasing barriers. The Biden administration's centrally planned transformational effort minimizes the importance of efficient cultural production and instead places issues such as climate change and equity front and center, because it has to be sustainable. If efficiency doesn't matter if you burn it out, you have to make it sustainable. If it's not sustainable, everyone suffers. This is so stupid. This is so stupid and short-sighted and idiotic. Anybody who's reading this and believes that this is a good idea and this is right, you are a fool. You are a short-sighted fool. And you know nothing. If your food is... This is like saying, oh, I have so much food in my fridge and it needs to... And I need food for the month. I have enough food in my fridge for the month, but I'm hungry right now, and I want to provide the best meal for myself in the most efficient way possible. Regardless of whether or not, like, at every single meal, regardless of doing anything, like, you're free to have whatever diet you want, you're free to eat as much as you want, however much you want, without any consideration for the repercussions for tomorrow. That is foolish. That is idiotic. You're killing yourself. And this is going to kill people. If you read this and you believe this and you don't understand what the fuck this says, you're a fucking goddamn moron and you need to get the fuck out of the voting booth. You are going to get people killed. And you're going to hurt yourself. You have no business. You have no business talking about this or running a government. The government is for the people. And that includes the people of the future. Do you really not care if your kids don't have food to eat because you completely obliterated the market and the land? The land doesn't just produce... It's not fucking magic, assholes. God damn it. I hate you. The USDA's strategic plan, fiscal year 2022 to 2026, identifies 6 strategic goals, the first 3 of which focus on issues such as climate change, renewable energy, and systematic racism. In the Secretary of Agriculture's message, there is only one mention of affordable food and nothing about efficient production. And the incredible innovation and respect for the environment that already exists within the agricultural community. The Biden administration, USD... I'm not using strong enough language for people who fucking agree with this shit. The Biden administration, USDA, strongly supported the recent United Nations UN Food System Summit. According to the USDA, quote, the stated A goal of the Food System Summit was to transform the way the world produces, consumes, and thinks about food within the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and to meet the challenges of poverty, food security, malnutrition, population growth, climate change, and the natural resource degradation. Did they not just say that it didn't say anything about affordable food? Food security and poverty and malnutrition and population growth all have to do with affordable food and efficiency. Because if you're not efficient and the food isn't affordable, then people aren't going to be able to eat, which is food efficient security and poverty. I hate this document. This document's fucking stupid. This document needs to be hung and lynched. Not unlike those who oppose reliable and affordable energy production, there is a disdain, especially by some on the left, for American agriculture and the food system. Bitch, where? The Biden administration's vision of a federal government developing a plan that fixes agriculture and focuses on issues secondary to food production is very disturbing. I hate you. No, you. A recent USDA-created program captures both the disrespect for American farmers and the Biden administration's effort to dictate agricultural practices. This idea will make American living conditions so poor they'll have to loot Canadian stores. You gonna hop over Trudeau's ditch there? You know, cross the no-touching zone? The USDA explained that it was concerned with farmers not transitioning to organic farming and therefore announced that it will dedicate $300 million to induce farmers to adopt organic farming. There is no recognition that farmers know how to farm better than DC politicians. Shut the fuck up. You literally said it was their job to disseminate information and give opportunities to farmers. Now you're telling me that they were disseminating information and enabling farmers by giving them resources to do those things based on that information, and you're telling them they're wrong for doing so. Every time, every chapter, they're like, here's a thing, here's an invented problem, here's our solution that is actually going to exacerbate their problem. Oh, also, by the way, here's the Biden administration doing the thing that we said was the job of this thing in the first place. Every single time. Fuck this document. Again, I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat. I'm a Canadian. I don't have a horse in that race. What I do have a horse in is you guys not lighting your country on fire, which is what this document is going to do, whether a Democrat puts it through or whether a Republican puts it through. I don't care which administration is doing this stuff. If they're doing this stuff, they're wrong. This is terrible. Ugh. Or that organic food is expensive. You do realize that more people producing more organic food would bring the price down, right? This is basic economics. That's just supply and demand. That's even simple economics. These are supposed to be bigwigs who understand the economy, right? These are all like suits that are writing this. And land incentive. The Biden administration has also been pushing so-called climate smart, quote, agricultural practices with received additional support in the Partisan Inflation Reduction Act. American agriculture should not need defending. According to USDA's latest data, farm output nearly tripled, a 175% increase from 1948 to 2019, while the amount of land farmed decreased. In fact, the farm output increased by 175%. All agricultural inputs increased by only 4%. Yeah, that's how numbers work. So what's the problem? In 2021, despite high food prices, a major problem and regressive, American consumers spent an average of about 10% of their personal disposable income on food, which is close to historic lows. Yeah, because nobody has any disposable income. For decades, this share has been in decline. Yeah, because of price gouging of major corporations, price gouging food during a pandemic. Duh. American farmers efficiently produce food using fewer resources, making it possible for food to be affordable. So then why isn't it? What is that sentence? American farmers efficiently produce food using fewer resources, making it possible for food to be affordable. And shouldn't that make farmers more rich then? And yet it doesn't? Weird. It's almost like there's some giant conglomerate corporate thumb hovering over everybody and squishing them for everything they're worth. This reality is not only something that should be defended, but also touted as a prime example of what makes American agriculture so successful. Then why are people only spending 10% of their disposable income? Like, this paragraph is two completely disjointed ideas. I don't know if you noticed. This reality is not felt by people in the day-to-day because everything's been inflated out the ass. The connection between efficiency and affordability seems lost in the Biden administration's effort to transform the food system. How? What do you mean? It says from 1948 to 2019. Your data is from before the Biden administration was in power. If you want that, you need data from at least 2 years into Biden's administration, if not longer. Recommendations. I hate this document. Proactively defend agriculture. From the offset, the next administration should denounce efforts to place ancillary issues like climate change ahead of food production and affordability when it comes to agriculture. Climate change is inherently tied to agriculture. You're an idiot. You're wrong. Shut the fuck up. Remove the U.S. from any association with UN and other efforts to push sustainable development schemes connected to food production. What? You don't want to... Okay. That's insane. Defend American agriculture and advance the critical importance of efficient and innovative food production, especially to advance safe and affordable food. Stress that ideal policy should remove obstacles imposed on American farmers and individuals across the supply food chain so it can meet the food needs of Americans. Clarify the critical importance of efficiency to food affordability and why a failure to recognize this fact especially hurts low-income households who spend a disproportionate share of after-tax income on food compared to higher income households. I hate you so much. To accomplish these objectives, the new administration should announce its principles through an executive order. The USDA should remove all references to transforming the food system on its website and other department disseminated material, and it should expressly and regularly communicate the principles informing the objectives listed above, as well as promote these principles through legislative efforts. The USDA should also should carefully review existing efforts that involve inappropriately imposing its preferred agricultural practices on farmers. You literally told it that its job is to disseminate and enable with scientific advancement. They do that and you're like, no, stop, not like that. Address the abuse of CCC discretionary authority. With the exception of the Federal Crop Insurance and the Commodity Credit Corporation, CCC, is generally the means by which agricultural-related farm bill programs are funded. The CCC is a funding mechanism which, in simple terms, has $30 billion a year at its disposal. Section 5 of the Commodity Credit Corporation's Charter Act, gives the Secretary of Agriculture broad discretionary authority to spend, quote, unused CCC money. However, in general, the past agriculture secretaries have not used this power to any meaningful extent. This changed dramatically during the Trump administration, when this discretionary authority was used to fund $28 billion in trade aid, quote, to farmers, consisting primarily of the Market Facilitation Program. In 2020, this authority was used for $20.5 billion in food purchases and income subsidies in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. At the time, critics warned that this use of the CCC, which in effect created a USDA slush fund, would lead future administrations to abuse the CCC, such as by pushing climate change policies. Predictably, this is precisely what the Biden administration has done, using the discretionary authority to create programs out of whole cloth, arguably without statutory authority. Arguably. For what it refers to as climate-smart agricultural practice. The merits of the various programs funded through the CCC discretionary authority is not the focus of this discussion. The major problem is that the Secretary of Agriculture is empowered to use a slush fund. Billions of dollars are being used for programs that Congress never envisioned or intended. Concern about this type of abuse is not new. In fact, from 2012 to 2017, Congress expressly limited Agriculture Secretary's discretionary spending authority under the Charter Act, and this take a drink. This was before the recent massive discretionary CCC spending occurred, which was done by Trump. So what's the problem? It was fine when Trump did it, but it's not okay when Biden did it. The use of the discretionary power is a separation of power problem. With Congress abrogating its spending power, this power is ripe for abuse, as could be expected with any slush fund, and it is a possible way to get around the Farm Bill process to achieve policy goals not secured during the legislative process. The next administration should refrain from using Section 5 discretionary authority. The USDA can address this abuse on its own by following the lead of most administrations and not using discretionary authority. Promote legislative fixes to address the abuse. Ideally, Congress would repeal the Secretary's discretionary authority under Section 5 of the Charter Act. There is no reason to maintain such authority. If Congress needs to spend money to assist farmers, it has legislative tools, including the Farm Bill and the annual appropriations process, to do so in a timely fashion. So they want to add bureaucracy to something and not have these emergency funds at disposal when needed. Again, every time they're like, oh, we want it gone here, oh, we want it here, but there's no explanation as to why it's good here and bad here. It's just a sweeping statement. While not an ideal solution, Congress should also amend the Charter Act to require prior congressional approval through duly enacted legislation before any money is spent. At minimum, Congress should amend the Charter Act to limit spending to directly help farmers and ranchers address issues due to unforeseen events not already covered by existing programs that constitute genuine emergencies that must be addressed immediately. Oh, you mean like massive droughts and fires that caused by climate change? Stuff like that? Prohibit the CCC from being used to assist parties beyond farmers and ranchers. Clarify that spending is only to address problems that are temporary in nature and ensure that funding is targeted to address such problems. Tighten the discretion within Section 5 and identify ways for improper application of the Charter Act to be challenged in court. I've heard a bunch of American streamers doomering about the upcoming Canadian election. Do you think that their concerns are well placed, or should they be worrying about our own election? Like the election that just happened, the one that the Conservatives forced. Is that the election you're talking about? Because that wasn't like a regular people election. That was like a congressional election. Or are you talking about the one coming up, like the big election that comes up, which I think is next year, if I'm not mistaken? Reform farm subsidies. Too often agriculture policies become synonymous with farm subsidy policies. This is unfortunate because making this synonymous fails to recognize that agricultural policy covers a wide range of issues, including issues that are outside of the proper scope of the USDA, such as environmental regulation. However, there is no question that farm subsidies are an important issue within agriculture policy that should be addressed by any incoming administration. There are several principles that even subsidy supporters would likely agree on, including the need to reduce market distortions. Subsidies should not influence planting decisions and discourage proper risk management and innovation. Incentivize planting on environmentally sensitive land or create barriers to entry for new farmers. Farm subsidies can lead to these market distortions, and therefore it would hardly be controversial to ensure that any subsidy scheme should be designed to avoid such problems. The overall goal should be to eliminate subsidy dependence. Despite what might be conventional wisdom, many farmers receive few to no subsidies, with most subsidies going to only a handful of commodities. According to the Congressional Research Service, the CRS, from 2014 to 2016, 94% of farm program support went to just 6 commodities: corn, cotton, peanuts, rice, soybeans, and wheat. Yeah, do you have any idea how much corn is made in Canada? Like, what the fuck? Using the result from the congressional election to doomer about the upcoming election. I think most of the concern is kind of bullshit. Paulier is a stupid piece of shit, and he's just using watered down 2016 Trump tactics, and so I kind of don't care. You know what I mean? Like, Trudeau's not as bad as people like to make him out to be. Paulier is a problem. I have enough faith in the Canadian people that people like the lady, the provincial, the conservative provincial leader in Alberta will not get in again because she literally let her province burn to the ground and refused to take help and do what she needed to do at all, and her policies are what caused the problem in the first place. And I don't think the people in Alberta will forget that anytime soon, or any other province that has had these massive fires happening that haven't had proper responses, like Doug Ford, for example, in Ontario and in Quebec. So I have a little bit of faith in the Canadian people, and I don't know what they're doomering about. So that together account for only 28% of farm receipts. Although many farmers do not receive much in the way of subsidies, especially those in areas of livestock and especially crops, fruit, vegetables, and nuts, there are still a significant number of farmers growing row crops like corn and cotton that do receive sufficient farm subsidies. The primary subsidy programs include the Agricultural Risk Coverage, or ARC, or ARC program, the Price Loss Coverage, or PLC program, and the Federal Crop Insurance Program. Farmers can participate on a crop-by-crop basis in the ARC program or the PLC program. These programs cover about 20 different crops. The ARC program protects farmers from what are referred to as shallow losses, providing payments when their actual revenues fall below 86% of the expected revenue from their crops. The PLC program provides payments to farmers when commodity prices fall below a fixed statutory established reference price. The Federal Crop Insurance Program is broader in scope than ARC and PLC, and in crop year 2019 covered 124 commodities. Farmers pay a portion of the premium to participate in the program. Taxpayers on average pay about 60% of the premium. As explained by CRS, revenue protection was the most frequent purchase policy type in 2019, according to almost 70% of the policies purchased. End of quote. While there are certainly other subsidy programs besides ARC, PLC, and the Federal Crop Insurance, one program that deserves special mention is the Federal Sugar Program. This program, unlike most other subsidy programs, intentionally tries to restrict supply and thereby drives up price. The program costs consumers as much as $3.7 billion a year. When it comes to reforming subsidy programs, why are you giving information about that one? When it comes to reforming subsidy programs, the next administration will primarily have to look at legislative solutions. The next administration should champion legislation that would, bullet point, not quote, repeal the federal sugar program. The federal government should not be the central planning business, and the sugar program is a prime example of harmful central planning. Its very purpose is to limit the sugar supply in order to increase prices. The program has a regressive effect since lower-income households spend more of their money to meet food needs compared to high-income households. Okay, you didn't explain what that program is or how it worked. You went on in a dive about these other programs, then said this program that you didn't dive into is the problem without actually explaining anything. This document is propaganda. Ideally, repeal the ARC and PLC programs. What? Farmers eligible to participate in ARC or PLC are generally already able to purchase federal crop insurance. Policies that protect against shortfalls in expected revenue, whether caused by lower prices or smaller harvests. The ARC program is especially egregious because farmers are being protected from shallow losses, which is another way of saying minor dips in expected revenue. This is hardly consistent with the concept of providing a safety net to help farmers when they fall on hard times. The Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, in one of its options to reduce the federal deficit, has once again identified repealing the Title I Farm Program, including RPLC and the Federal Sugar Program. Did they not spend this entire chapter at the beginning talking about how the Democrats are fucking over farmers and giving them less and less and less and less and restricting them? These people are like, yeah, but those safety nets, those things that are protecting you, are those things that ensure like some kind of stability in your life, especially during like massive climate change events. You fuck you. You get nothing. But these are the people that you're gonna vote for. Sure. Yeah, if you want to send me the video, yeah, no problem. I'll take a look at it. Stop paying farmers twice for price and revenue losses during the same year. Farmers can receive support from ARC and PLC programs and the federal crop insurance program to cover price declines and revenue shortfalls during the same year. Congress should prohibit this duplication by prohibiting farmers from receiving ARC or PLC programs the same year they receive crop insurance indemnity. But multiple things can have happened. Whatever. Reduce the premium subsidy rates for crop insurance. On average, taxpayers cover about 60% of the premium cost for policy purchased in the federal crop insurance program. One of the most widely supported and bipartisan policy reforms is to reduce the premium subsidy that taxpayers are forced to pay. At minimum, taxpayers should not pay more than 50% of the premium. After all, taxpayers should not have to pay more than the farmers who benefit from the crop insurance policies. I can't, you know what? That's stupid. I'm not going to explain it any more than that. If you know, you know. If you need to know, look up a little bit more about how, like, taxes actually function and what they're for. My Unfinished Journey for Two said, Hail Nero and Chesh, I don't want sugar from them. No sugar tonight in my coffee. No sugar tonight in my tea. No sugar to stand beside me. CBO has found that reducing the premium subsidies to 47% would save $8.1 billion over 10 years and have little impact on crop insurance participation or on the number of covered acres. In that analysis, there would be a reduction in insured acres of just 1/2% and only 1.5% of acres would have lower coverage levels. This reform is basically all benefit with little to no cost. In a recently released report identifying options to reduce the federal deficit, CBO found that reducing the premium subsidy to 40% would save $20.9 billion over 10 years. Beyond these legislation reforms, the next administration should. So you're just going to take $20.9 billion from farmers over 10 years. Got it. And you're pro-farmers. And it's the Democrats that aren't? Okay. Communicate to Congress the necessary transparency and genuine reform process. The White House and the USDA should make it very clear that the Farm Bill process, including reform of farm subsidies, must be conducted through an open process with time for markup and opportunity for changes to be made outside of Agriculture Committee process. The Farm Bill too often is developed behind closed doors without any chance for real reform. The White House, given the power of the bully pulpit, must demand a genuine reform process and express unwavering support for the USDA that shapes a safety net that considers the interest of farmers. You just talked about getting rid of everything. While also remembering the interests of the taxpayers and consumers. Any safety net for farmers should be a true safety net, one that helps farmers when they have experienced serious unforeseen losses, preferably when there has been a disaster or unforeseen natural event causing damage, and that exists to help them in unusual situations. Separate the agriculture provisions of the Farm Bill from the nutrition provisions. To have genuine reform and proper consideration of the issues, agricultural programs should be considered in separate legislation, distinct from food stamps and nutrition part of the Farm Bill, and reauthorization of such programs should be fixed on different timelines to ensure this separation. Agricultural and nutritional programs, which are distinct from each other, have been combined together for political purposes. So for political reasons, something which is readily admitted by proponents of this log rolling. When it comes to American agricultural and welfare programs, they deserve sound policy debates, not political tactics at the expense of thoughtful discourse. Nothing about this is thoughtful discourse. Side note, I would like to point out really quick, providing food for people through food stamps, but only enabling them to buy shit food and not enabling like good dietary practices is bad for children. Also, tying it together with agriculture means that the agriculture is going to be directed in a way that it is producing more and better food rather than literally everything being made of corn all of the time, which is pretty much American food on a whole. And my unfinished sock for 2 says, don't forget, use all your socks to like and share. Thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe, and all that good shit. Thank you very much. 10 supers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. So, move the work of Food and Nutrition Service. The USDA implements many means-tested federal support programs, including the largest food assistance program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, or SNAP, also known as food stamps. The Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or the WIC food program. The Food and Nutrition Services, FNS, oversee these programs and other food and nutrition programs, including the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion, which handles the USDA's work on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, Dietary Guidelines. Food nutrition programs include SNAP, WIC, the National School Lunch Program, or the NSLP, the School Breakfast Program, SBP, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, the Nutrition Program for the Elderly, Nutrition Service Incentives, the Summer Food Service Program, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, the Temporary Emergency Food Program, the Farmers Market Nutrition Food Program, the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, and the Special Milk Program. The next administration should move the USDA and nutrition programs to the Department of Health and Human Services. There's more than 89 current sorry, that dash is throwing me off. Hold on, I need to type. Hold on, my brain just shut off. MEANST, means tested. There we go. Holy shit. That dash just fucked my whole day. Welfare programs and total means tested spending has been estimated to surpass $1.2 trillion between federal and state resources. Period, because, take a drink. Means-tested federal programs are siloed and administrated in separate agencies. The effectiveness and size of the welfare state remains largely hidden. I don't think that's true, but okay. There are means-tested food support programs in the USDA, specifically FNS, whereas most means-tested programs are at the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS. All means-tested anti-poverty programs should be overseen by one department, especially HHS, which handles most welfare programs. Reform SNAP. Ostensibly, SNAP spends money through electronic benefit transfer, EBT cards, to help low-income, in quotes, individuals buy food. It is the largest of the federal nutrition programs. Food stamps are designed to be supplemented by other forms of income, whether through paid employment or nonprofit support. SNAP serves 41.1 million individuals, an increase from 4.3 million people during the Biden years. Oh, an increase of, 4.3 million. In 2020, the food stamps program cost $79.1 billion. That number continued to rise by 2022. Outlays hit $119.5 billion. The next administration should re-implement work requirements. The statutory language coverage food stamps allow states to waive work requirements that otherwise apply to work-capable individuals, that is, adult beneficiaries between the ages of 18 and 50 who are not disabled and who do not have any children or other dependents in the home. Even a strong economy, work expectations are fairly limited. Individuals who are work capable and without dependents are required to work or prepare for work for 20 hours per week. The work requirements are then implemented unless the state requests a waiver from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Services. Waivers from statutory work requirements can be approved in 2 instances: in unemployment rates of more than 10% or lack of sufficient jobs. You earn the right to work, to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work. The Trump administration bolstered USDA's work expectations in the food stamp program. In February of 2019, FNS issued a modest regulatory change that applied only to able-bodied individuals without dependents, beneficiaries age 18 to 49, not elderly or disabled, who did not have children or other dependents in the home, ABAWD. The FNS rule changed when the state could receive a waiver from implementing the ABAWD work requirement. Oh, right when a pandemic hit, eh? Really? Oh, go figure. The pandemic that they knew was happening. That one? That they knew about in 2019? Under the new rule, in order to waive the work requirement, the state's unemployment rate had to be above 6% for more than 24 months. 24 hours. The rule, which means like it's slow to move, which means for 24 months people are suffering. Oh, good. The rule also defined area in such a way that states would be unable to combine contiguous countries in order to maximize their waivers. Of more than 40 million food stamps beneficiaries, the Trump rule would have applied only to 680,000 individuals in the fiscal year of 2021. From 4 million to 688? What the fuck? The Trump reform was scheduled to go in effect, but a D.C. District Court federal judge enjoined the rule. The USDA filed an appeal in late December of 2020, but the Biden administration withdrew from defending the challenge, and the rule was never implemented. Yeah, good. That would have so many people would have died. So many people in America would have just starved to death inside of that pandemic. Oh my God. Trump was literally just fucking out here murking Americans. Holy shit. Beyond the able-bodied work requirements, FNS should implement better regulations to clarify options for states to implement the general work requirement. This requirement is an option states can only apply to work-capable beneficiaries aged 16 to 59. If beneficiaries' work hours are below 30 hours a week, states can implement the general work requirement to oblige beneficiaries to register for work or participate in SNAP employment and training or workforce assigned by the state SNAP agency. Increasing clarity for the states would include items like states being required to offer employment and training spots for those that request them, not simply budgeting for every currently enrolled able-bodied adult. What the so you want the states to employ more people? So you want that to go onto the state's budget? And how are they going to pay those people? In food stamps? You earn the right to earn the right to work? Like, that's fucked up. That's some fucking Orwellian, like, dystopian bullshit. Reform broad-based categorical eligibility. Federal law permits states to enroll individuals in food stamps if they receive benefit from another program, such as Temporary Assistance for Family Needs, TANF, Jesus Christ, program. However, under an administration option, TANF, called Broad-Based Categorical Eligibility, BBCE, benefit, is defined so broadly that it includes simply receiving distributed pamphlets and 1-800 numbers. I don't know if that's true. This definition, with its low threshold to trigger a benefit, allows individuals to bypass eligibility limits, particularly the assist requirement, bracket how much the applicant has in resources such as bank accounts or property, and bracket adopting the BBCE option has even allowed millionaires to enroll in food stamp programs. The Trump administration proposed to close the loophole with a rule to, quote, increase program integrity and reduce fraud, waste, and abuse. The regulation was not finalized before the end of the Trump administration. Reevaluate the Thrifty Food Plan. In dramatic overreach, the Biden administration unilaterally increased food stamp benefits by at least 23% in October of 2021. Through the update to the Thrifty Food Plan, in which the USDA analyzes a basket of food intended to provide nutritious diet, the USDA increased food stamps outlay by between $250 billion and $300 billion over 10 years. Although the 2018 Farm Bill instructed FNS to update the Thrifty Food Plan by 2023, and every 5 years thereafter, every previous Thrifty Food Plan has been always cost neutral, just an inflation update, exactly what CBO estimated as cost of the 2018 Farm Bill. The Biden administration may have skirted regulations and congressional authority to increase the overall cost of the program. In fact, Senate and House Republicans requested that the Government Accountability Office investigate the legal authorities and process that the FSDA undertook to achieve at such an unprecedented increase. Eliminate the heat and eat loophole. State can artificially boost a household's food stamp benefit by using a heat and eat loophole. The amount of food stamps a household receives is based on its countable income minus certain deductions. Households that receive a benefit from the Low Income Heat and Energy Assistance Program, or the LIHEAP, are eligible for a larger utility deduction. In order to make households eligible for a higher deduction and thus for greater food stamp benefits, states have distributed LIHEAP checks for amounts as small as $1 to food stamp recipients. In citation needed. In the 2014 Farm Bill tightened this loophole by requiring that the household must receive more than $20 annually in LIHEAP payments to be eligible for the higher utility deduction and subsequently higher food stamp benefits. Nonetheless, the state continued to inflate their standard utility allowances. Under the Trump administration, the USDA proposed a rule which was not finalized, that would have standardized the utility allowance. Reform the WIC. Turning to WIC, this program distributes money through EBT cards to help low-income women, infants, and children under 6 purchase nutrition-rich foods and nutrition education, including breastfeeding support. As of August 2022, approximately 6.3 million people participated in WIC each month to purchase food. In 2021, WIC federal outlays were $5 billion. The next administration should reform the state voucher system. State agencies control WIC costs by approving only one brand of infant formula through competitive bidding for infant formula rebate contracts. Because 50% of baby formula is purchased through the federal WIC program, it is vital that the regulation for these competitive bidding contracts does not unintentionally create monopolies. Reevaluate excessive regulation. As for baby formula regulations, generally labeling regulations and regulations that unnecessarily delay the manufacture or sale of baby formula should be reevaluated. During the Biden administration, there has been devastating baby formula shortages. That's not because... Okay. Return to the original purpose of school meals. Federal meal programs for K-12 students were created to provide food to children from low-income families while at school. Today, however, federal school meals increasingly resemble entitlement programs that have strayed far from their original objective and represent an example of the never-ending expanding federal footprint in local school operations. The NSLP and SBP are two of the largest K-12 meal programs provided by federal taxpayer money. The NSLP launched in 1946 and the SBP in 1966, both as operations specifically for children in poverty. During the 2019 pandemic, federal policymakers temporarily expanded access to school meal programs, but some lawmakers and federal officials have now proposed making the expansion permanent. Yet even before the pandemic, research found that federal officials had already expanded these programs to serve children from upper-income homes. These programs are rife with improper payments and efficiencies. Can you imagine being like, "Hey, you want to go to school? You want to get school lunch? We need you to scan this card that shows us how much money your parents make." Heritage Foundation research. Heritage Foundation research. Yeah, okay, we're gonna just immediately toss that out. From 2019 found that after enactment of the Communities Eligibility Provision, CEP, in 2010, the share of students from middle and upper income homes receiving free meals in states that participated in CEP doubled and in some cases tripled, all in a program meant for children from families with low income or below 185% of the federal poverty line. Children from homes at or below 130% of the federal poverty line are eligible for free lunches, while students from families at or below 185% of poverty are eligible for reduced price lunches. This is so much extra bureaucracy just for a snack. Under CEP, if 40% of students in a school or district are eligible for federal meals, all students in that school or district can receive free meals. That sounds like a good idea. However, the USDA has taken it even further, improperly interpreting the law to allow a subset of schools within a district to be grouped together to reach the 40% threshold. As a result, the school with zero low-income students can be grouped together with that. Yeah, that's not how school district works, but the districts are No, fuck you. I don't care. Fuck off. Low-income students, together with schools with high levels of low-income students. As a result, all the students in the schools within that group, or even schools without low-income students, can receive free federal meals. Schools can direct resources meant for students in poverty to schools from wealthier families. Further, then just give everybody. Just do it for everybody. This is so fucking stupid. Furthermore, the NSLP and SBP are among the most inaccurate federal programs according to payment-agency.gov, a project of the U.S. Office of Management and Budget and the Office of the Inspector General. Before federal auditors reduced the rigor of annual reporting requirements in 2018, the NSLP has wasted nearly $2 billion taxpayer resources through payment provided to ineligible recipients. Even after the auditing changes, which the U.S. government... Oh no! Kids got food. What a waste of resources. Accountability Office said the results in the USDA not regularly assessing the program's fraud risks. The NSLP wasted nearly $5 million in fiscal year 2021. The SBP now wastes nearly $200 million annually. Yeah, wasted on feeding children. Despite the ongoing effort to expand school meals under CEP and the evidence of waste and inefficiency, left-of-center members of Congress and President Biden's administration have nonetheless proposed further expansions to extend federal school meals. Then they're not wasting or misappropriating the funds, they're doing it on purpose. Meals to include every K-12 student regardless of need. The administration recently proposed expanding federal school meal programs offered during the school year to be offered during the summer as part of the American Families Plan, and also proposed expanding CEP. Other federal officials, including Senator Bernie Sanders, independent VT, which is Vermont, have in recent years proposed expanding NSLP to all students to serve the students in need and preserve the misuse of taxpayer money. The next administration should focus on students in need and reject efforts to transform federal school meals into an entitlement program, especially the next administration should. Hey, yeah, by the way, maybe if you want people to have more kids, making it more affordable to have more kids all the way across the board, such as school lunches, is a good way to do it. Promulgate a rule properly interpreting the CEP. The USDA should issue a rule that clarifies that only an individual school or school district as a whole, not a subset of schools within a district. School district as a whole would be subsets of schools within a district. You dipshits. Must exceed 40% of the criteria to be eligible for CEP. Education officials should be prohibited from grouping schools together. Work with lawmakers to eliminate CEP. The NSLP and SBP should be directed to serve children in need, not become an entitlement for students from middle and upper income homes. Congress should eliminate CEP. Further, the USDA should not provide meals to students during the summer unless students are taking summer school classes. Currently, students can get meals from schools even if they are not in summer school, which has, in effect, turned schools' meals into a federal catering program. Fuck students from low-income families for 2 months out of the year. We just want people to starve. This is horrible. Restore programs to their original intent and reject efforts to create universal free school meals. The USDA should work with lawmakers to restore NSLP and SBP to original goal of providing food to K-12 students who otherwise would not have food to eat while at school. Federal school meals should be focused on children in need, and any effort to expand student eligibility for federal school meals to include all K-12 students should be soundly rejected. Such expansion would allow an inefficient, wasteful program to grow, magnify, and amount wasted taxpayer resources. You know, rich kids don't have to eat that. They could still buy stuff, so that money is still going back into the system. Reform conservation programs. Farmers, in general, are... Why is this in here? Why is this in a, whatever? Farmers in general are excellent stewards of the land, if not for moral or ethical considerations, then out of self-interest to make sure the land and, by extension, their livelihoods remain intact. Farmers are often called the original conservationists. Not here. When evaluating federal conservation programs, it is important to remember the importance of the land to farmers. In terms of USDA federal conservation programs, both the USDA Farm Service Agency, or the FSA, and Natural Resource Conservation Services, the NRCS, oversee numerous programs. As a general matter, the next administration should ensure these programs address genuine, specific environmental concerns. You mean like climate change? With a focus on currently existing environmental problems, not those that are speculative in nature. These conservation programs should have clearly identifiable goals, with the success or failure of these programs being directly measurable. Oh, you mean like the ozone hole? Any assistance to farmers to take specific actions should not be provided unless the assistance will directly, clearly help to address a specific environmental problem. Further, any assistance to encourage farmers to engage in certain practices should only be provided if the farmers have adopted the practices in the first place. Then how do you give them the information and the incentive to do this? This is so stupid. There are specific issues that do the thing, but not the thing. But do the thing, but not the thing. There are specific issues. This is an abusive parent who's like, do this thing, and then you do the thing, and then they get mad at you for doing the thing. Because they're going to be mad at you regardless. There are specific issues that the next administration should address. The Conservation Reserve Program, which is run by the FSA, pays farmers to not farm some of their land. This program has recently received attention as agricultural groups rightfully seek to farm without penalty voluntarily idle land in light of the consequences to food prices of Russia invading Ukraine. There is also a need to reform USDA's conservation easements. These easements are a powerful tool to incentivize long-term preservation of ecosystems while still allowing farmers to benefit economically. However, when farmers and ranchers sign conservation easements with the USDA, they can be enforced in perpetuity. Future generations, be they descendants of the landowners or new residents, are bound to those conditions. Ecosystems and topography naturally change over time, but without legislative change, easements requirements will not. The next administration should champion the elimination of Conservation Reserve Program. Farmers should not be paid in such a sweeping way not to farm their land. If there is a desire to ensure that extremely sensitive land is not farmed, this should be addressed through targeted effort that are clearly connected to addressing a specific concrete environmental harm. The USDA should work with Congress to eliminate this overbroad program. Reform the NRCS wetlands and erodible land compliance and appeals. Problematic NRCS overreach should be avoided entirely by removing its authority to prescribe specific practices on particular farm operation in order to ensure continued eligibility to participate in USDA farm programs, and to require instead that each farm, as a function of eligibility, must have created a general best practice plan. Such a plan could be approved by the local county soil and water conservation district and the SWCD. The local SWCD commissioners are elected by their peers in each respective county and are better suited than the NRCS to provide guidance for farm operations in their respective jurisdictions. Yeah, we don't want any government overhaul. We want to gut it, and we want it to be easily corruptible. At a minimum, destroy the local ecosystem. At a minimum, a new administration should support legislation to divest more power to the states and possibly local SWCDs regarding erodible land and wetland conservation. God, no! This is horrible. I'm getting flashbacks to Stephen Harper and the absolute travesty that was the way he treated the Canadian conservation lands. Reform easements. The new administration should, to the extent authorized by the law, limit the use of permanent easements and collaborate with lawmakers to prohibit the USDA from creating new permanent easements. Other major issues and specific recommendations. Although the following issues have not been listed as priority, these issues are still extremely important and the next administration should address them. Only meat and poultry from federally inspected facilities can be sold in interstate commerce. Even meat and poultry from USDA-approved sites, inspected facilities may only be sold in interstate commerce with limited exceptions. This is despite the fact that the states with USDA-approved inspection programs must meet and enforce requirements that are at least equal to those imposed under the Federal Meat and Poultry Products Inspections Act and the Humane Method of Slaughter Act of 1978. This is an unnecessary regulatory barrier that makes it difficult to get meat and poultry into interstate commerce to create more options for consumers and farmers. Legislation entitled to New Markets for State Inspected Meat and Poultry Act of 2021 would help remove this obstacle. Fuck treating animals with respect, and fuck everybody and the safety regulations. Like, they're just trying to gut the whole thing. Promote legislation that would allow state-inspected meat to be sold in interstate commerce. These barriers to sale of meat and poultry from USDA-approved sites, inspected facilities should be removed. Eliminate or reform marketing orders and checkoff programs. Marketing orders and checkoff programs they want to turn the turn farming into fucking cowboys. The wild, wild west. Marketing orders and checkoff programs for agriculture commodities are similar in many ways. They both allow private actors within an industry to collaborate with the federal government to compel other competitors within an industry to fund the respective market orders or checkoff programs. There is currently 22 checkoff programs, and they focus on research and promotion of commodities such as beef and eggs. Marketing orders cover research and promotion, but also cover issues such as quality regulation and volume controls. The latter issue's volume control is a means to restrict supply, which drives up prices for consumers. Fortunately, there are few active volume controls. Marketing orders and checkoff programs are some of the most egregious programs run by the USDA. They are, in fact, a tax, a means to compel speech, and a government-blessed cartels. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Instead of getting private cooperation, they are tools for industry actors to work with government to force cooperation. The next administration should reduce the number and scope of marketing orders and checkoff programs. The USDA should reject any new requests for marketing orders and checkoff programs to the extent authorized by law and eliminate existing programs when possible. While the programs work differently, there are often petitions, processes, and other ways that make it difficult for affected parties to get rid of the marketing orders and checkoff programs, and the USDA itself may not even be required to honor requests to terminate the program. The USDA should make the process easier. Further, the USDA should reject any effort to bring back volume controls to limit supplies of commodities. Yeah, no, there's reasons for those limitations. They're not just arbitrary to drive up the price. They're there to make sure you don't have 50 billion chickens being, like, fucking treated like shit and potentially enabling disease, like, you know, mad cow disease and shit, and bird flu, and, like, low grade quality meats. Work with Congress to eliminate marketing orders and checkoff programs. These programs should be eliminated, and if the industry actors want to collaborate, they should do so through private means, not using the government to compel cooperation. Promote legislation that would require regular votes. There should be regular voting for parties subject to checkoff programs, so no government oversight. Got it. The checkoff programs and marketing orders. For example, the voting should occur at least every 5 years to determine whether a marketing order or checkoff program should continue. The USDA should be required to honor the result of such a vote. Through regular voting, parties can determine their support for a market order or checkoff program to ensure that those administering them will be held accountable. Focus on trade and policy, not trade promotion. The USDA's Foreign Agriculture Service, or FAS, covers numerous issues including trade policy, which is a reference to removing trade barriers, among other things, to ensure the environment conducive to trade. It also covers the trade promotion. These includes programs like Market Access Program that subsidizes trade associations, business, and other private entities to market and promote their products overseas. FAS should play a proactive and leading role to help open up markets for American farmers and ranchers. There are numerous barriers such as sanitary and phytosanitary measures, blocking American agriculture products from getting access to foreign markets. However, FAS should not help businesses and industries promote their exports, something these businesses and industries can and should do on their own. The next administration should push legislation to repeal export promotion programs. The USDA should work with Congress to repeal market development programs like the Market Access Program and similar programs. Remove obstacles for agriculture biotechnology. Innovation is critical to agriculture production and the ability to meet future food needs. The next administration should embrace innovation and technology, not hinder its use, especially because of scare tactics that ignore sound science. Oh, you mean like, like the Impossible Burger and stuff like that? One of the key innovations in agriculture is genetic engineering. According to the USDA, currently over 90% of the U.S. corn, upland cotton, and soybeans are produced using GE, genetically engineered varieties, end quote. Despite the importance of agricultural biotechnology, in 2016, Congress passed a federal mandate to label genetically engineered food. These legislations were arguably just a means to try and provide a negative connotation to GE food. There are other challenges as well for agricultural biotechnologies. For example, Mexico plans to the importation of U.S. genetically modified yellow corn. The next administration should counter scare tactics and remove obstacles. The USDA should strongly counter scare tactics regarding agricultural biotechnologies and adopt policies to remove unnecessary barriers to approval and adoption of biotechnology. Repeal the federal labeling mandate. The USDA should work with Congress to repeal the federal labeling law, which maintaining federal preemption and stress that voluntary labeling is allowed. Nah, I think labeling the label is fine. Just make people more educated about what GMOs actually are and what they do. Use all tools available to remove improper trade barriers against agricultural biotechnology. The USDA should work closely with the Office of the United States Trade Representatives to remove improper barriers imposed by other countries to block U.S. agricultural goods. So you're just going to be like, hey, listen, you other countries with like higher FDA regulations and higher grade expectations for your meat. Yeah, but we're America. You should just let us do it. Like Canada has higher standards of food, so there's American food that doesn't make it into Canada, or like certain foods in like bread from America has to be labeled as cake because it's got too much sugar in it, like shit like that. Reform Forest Service wildfire management. The United States Forest Service is one of 4 federal government land management agencies that administer 606 million acres, or 95% of 64 million acres of surface land area managed by the federal government, located within the USDA, the Forest Service Management, and National Forest Systems, which comprised of 193 million acres. As explained by the USDA, quote, the USDA Forest Service mission is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations, end quote. The Forest Service should focus on proactive management of the forests and grasslands that does not depend heavily on burning. There should be a resilient forest and grasslands in the wake of management actions. Yeah, what was that? Trump going in there with a rake? Oh my God. Wildfires have become a primary vegetation management regime for national forests and grasslands. They just throw these words around. Recognizing the need for vegetation management, the Forest Service has adopted a civiculture using unplanned fire, such as unplanned human-caused fires, to otherwise accomplish vegetation management. The Forest Services should instead be focused on addressing the precipitous annual amassing of biomass in the forest that drive the behavior of wildfires by thinning trees, removing live fuels and dead wood, and taking other preemptive steps. The Forest Service can help minimize the consequences of wildfires. That is such a microcosm of a way to view like the ecosystem of a forest. That is, you can't just take out dead logs out of a forest. The dead logs are needed in the forest. This is insane. Increasing timber sales could also play an important role in the effort to change the behavior of wildfire because there would be less biomass, less trees. Timber sales and timber harvested in public forests dropped precipitously in the early 1900s and still remains very low. For example, in 1988, the volume of timber sold and harvested by volume was about 11 billion and 12.6 billion broad feet, or BFF, respectively. In 2021, the timber sold was 2.8 BFF, and the timber harvested was 2.4 BFF. In 2018, former President Donald Trump issued Executive Order 13855, or 13,855, to, among other things, promote active management of forests and reduce wildfire risk. Yeah, and how did that work out? Poorly. The answer is poorly. The executive order stated, quote, active management of vegetation is needed to treat these dangerous conditions on federal land, but is often delayed due to challenges associated with regulatory analysis and current consultation requirements, end quote. It further explains the need to reduce regulatory obstacles to fuel reduction in forest created by the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act. The next administration should champion executive action consistent with law and proactive legislation to reduce wildfires. That's climate change, guys. This would involve embracing Executive Order 13855 or 13,855, building upon it, and working with lawmakers to promote active management of vegetation, reduce regulatory obstacles, and reducing federal buildup of increased timber sales. A lot of this is just repetitive, by the way, if you didn't notice. Eliminate or reform the dietary guidelines. The USDA, in collaboration with the HHS, publishes the dietary guidelines every 5 years. For more than 40 years, the federal government has been releasing dietary guidelines, and during this time there has been consistent controversy due to questionable recommendations and claims regarding the politicization of the process. What? In 2015 dietary guidelines process, the influential Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee veered off mission in an attempt to persuade the USDA and HHS to adopt nutritional advice that focused not just on human health, but health of the planet. Issues such as climate change and sustainability infiltrated the process. Sustainability matters for your nutrition. If you can't sustain a good diet, then you're not going to have a good diet for a very long time, which defeats the purpose. Issues such as climate, blah, blah, blah. Fortunately, in 2020, the 2020 process did not get diverted in this manner. However, the dietary guidelines remain a potential tool to influence dietary choices to achieve objectives unrelated to the nutritional and dietary well-being of Americans. There is no shortage of private sector dietary advice for the public, and nutrition and dietary choices are best left to individuals to address their personal needs. Just give them the information. This includes working with their own health professionals that they can't afford. By the way, most people actually don't have health professionals in their lives. As it is, there is consistently changing advice provided by the government with insufficient qualifications on advice, oversimplification to the point of miscommunicating important points, questionable use of science, and potential political influence. The dietary guidelines have a major impact because they not only can influence how private health providers offer nutritional advice, but they also inform federal programs. School meals are required to be consistent with the guidelines. The next administration should work with lawmakers to repeal the dietary guidelines. The USDA should help lead an effort to repeal the dietary guidelines. Minimally, the next administration should reform the dietary guidelines. The USDA with HHS should develop a more transparent process that properly considers the underlying science and does not overstate its findings. It should also ensure that the dietary guidelines focus on nutritional issues and do not veer off mission by focusing on unrelated issues such as environment that have nothing to do with nutritional advice. Yes, it does. Very much so does. In fact, if environmental concerns supersede or water down recommendations for human nutritional advice, the public would be receiving misleading health information. The USDA, working with lawmakers, should codify these reforms. Clean water is an environmental issue and incredibly important to a nutritional diet, you fuckwads. Organizational issues. Based on the recommendation of reforms identified as ideal solutions, the USDA should look different in many respects. One of the biggest changes would be the USDA that is not focused on welfare. Given that means-tested welfare programs would be moved to the HHS, the Food and Nutrition Service that administers the food and nutrition program would be eliminated. The Farm Service Agency, which administers many of the farm subsidy programs, would be significantly smaller in size if the ideal farm subsidy reforms were adopted. Most important, the conservative USDA, as envisioned, would not be used as a governmental tool to transform the nation's food system, but instead would respect the importance of efficient agricultural production and ensure that the government does not hinder farmers and ranchers from producing an abundant supply of safe and affordable food. There's already too much over farming. So much food is just thrown away. Like, it's not even funny. Like, if you want to be efficient, you need to figure out a way to deal with that. For a conservative USDA to become a reality, it is to stay on course with its mission outlined. The White House must strongly support these reforms and install strong USDA leaders. These individuals most certainly will be faced with opposition from some of the agriculture community who will fight changing subsidies in any fashion, although many of the reforms would likely be embraced by those in agriculture. They're going to fight it, but they're going to like it. There would be strong opposition from environmental groups and others who want federal government to transform American agriculture to meet their ideological objectives. Sustainability is not an ideological objective. It could be considered a philosophy, I guess. Finally, there would be opposition from the left of center groups who do not want to reform SNAP and would expand welfare and dependency, such as through universal free school meals, as opposed to reducing dependency. Reducing the scope of government and providing individual freedom may not always be easy, but it is something that conservatives regularly should strive for. Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice we are willing to make. The listed reforms the U.S. Department of Agriculture would help to accomplish these objectives and are well worth fighting for to achieve a freer and more prosperous nation by starving people. Children specifically. Conclusion. This chapter started with a discussion of the incredible success of America's farmers and American agriculture in general. This is how this chapter should close as well. Americans are blessed with an agricultural sector and food system in general, which are worthy of incredible respect. A conservative USDA should undermine them and fuck them over at every given opportunity to save more money for some reason. We still don't know why they need to save this money, by the way. They haven't talked about that at all. If we remember correctly, how did the budget get balanced again when Clinton was in office? How did that happen? Anyway, a conservative... Tax rich people! Deficit solved. I know I'm oversimplifying it. I'm sorry. A conservative USDA should appreciate... this while recognizing that its role is to serve the interests of all Americans, not special interest. By being a champion of unleashing the potential of American agriculture, a conservative USDA would help to ensure a future with abundant supply of safe and affordable food for individuals and families in the United States across the globe. Author's note. The author would like to thank all the contributors for their assistance, expertise, and insight into the development of this chapter. In addition, special thanks to Rachel Wilfong, who was instrumental in getting this chapter ready for submission. And then here's the citations. So, well, final note, as we wrap this up here, and I put these on screen for you. If I were the people who wrote this, I would be scared for my life if I was an author of this and my name was on this, because of how violent this document is and how many people are going to die and how many people they're pushing to the edge of not surviving. And, like, this is the kind of stuff that gets a farmer to drive a truck through your house. Like, they have farming equipment, and that farming equipment is more powerful than your house is. And this is the kind of shit that happens. And I would have a hard problem, like, I would have a hard time saying that the farmer wasn't justified in knocking your house down. I would have a hard time with that. Maybe that's just me, but, you know, if you were to fuck over farmers this badly, and while you're trying to pretend that you're, like, for the people and for the farmers, like, come on. Like, come on. Like, how many farmers' children have to die before one of the farmers is justified for driving a truck through, like a tractor into, like, this fucker's house? But, you know, maybe do it while he's not there, so, you know, it's just property damage. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, how much are you allowed to hit somebody before they hit you back? How much are you allowed to abuse people and starve people and kill people before those people are allowed to fight back? I think that's a fair question. If you have an answer for me, please leave it in the comments down below. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. Killdozer 2, Rural Rampage. Remember the guy who built a tank? Yeah, that guy. Sent me a short video everyone might enjoy. It's TLDR about Project 2025. How long is the video? I do have one that I have to play, so I might have to save that one for next time. These citations are really long. At least it has citations, I guess. That's better than the other ones. 4 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes is a little bit much. Maybe next time. I don't want to play, I'm not too keen on playing anything that's like a summary of this stuff because I'm trying to stray away from summaries for the time being. Maybe when I'm like near the end of reading it, then it would be a good time to play it, but I don't want to play anything that's a summary right now. Unless somebody's already done the work and done summaries of each chapter. So next time we will be at chapter 11. I do have a video to play you guys for the ending of this time. So let me just pull that up real quick. This one was sent to me by Rose. Oh, no, never mind, not this one. I had another one. I don't know where it went. I lied, I don't have one. I had one, and I've forgotten it, and I don't know where it is. I guess I could look. My voice is tired, though. We did it in 2 hours, though. Good job, us. Congratulations, everybody. Whew! Let's go with my watch history. Let's see, I don't remember how long ago it was that I watched it, though. A while. You know what? I'm just gonna play this. I'm gonna show you guys what an actual eagle sounds like, because as far as I'm concerned, America is built on lies, and American freedom is built on lies, and I think now is a time that the American people have a chance to make it not. So this is the difference between what a bald eagle actually sounds like and what a hawk actually sounds like. This is what your freedom is based off. It's based off of fucking lies, and you have the power to change it. I'm gonna get out of here. I will be back doing art on Twitch. If you're interested in following me for art and less political stuff, go find the link down in the description below. I will be on Twitch at 4 p.m., which is in about an hour and a little bit, and I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye!